Hey everybody, welcome back to the official European League of Football podcast. I'm your host, Nick Alfieri, aka Nauf. Today we've got a special guest, not a player, not a coach, not somebody involved with the team. We have got Tim Hensvelemenke, who is a beat writer and does the power rankings for the European League of Football. He's an absolute expert on the league. We had a great conversation going over different categories about individual players and teams. I think you guys might enjoy this one. It was a very fun conversation with a little bit of controversial hot takes here and there. Without further ado, Tim Hensvelemenke.
We are good to go. Guys, welcome to the ELF podcast. We have a very special guest today, the man Tim Hensvelemenke.
That's right.
Good?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Working on the German pronunciation. Yes, we've got kind of a special episode this week for everybody. Obviously, you're not a player, you're not a coach. How would you describe yourself and your relationship to the Elf?
I think the best way to describe my job is a beat writer. So I just talk about the teams, do my power rankings, be in this podcast. So just report about what's going on in the European League of Football.
Yeah,
that's basically it.
And I love the work that you do, man. And I actually right now I've got your most recent power rankings pulled up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And before we prepared some categories that we'll talk about in a second, different categories, players and teams that we will talk about. But first, I want to talk a little bit about your most recent power ranking, like I said, and maybe ask you to justify some of these rankings. So I think position 1 and 2, Fire and Vikings, quite clear. Nothing crazy about that.
Has to be Vikings by Fire.
Yeah, has to be. Do you feel is there ever any case for you to put the Vikings above the Fire? Do you ever feel tempted for that?
I mean, the Rhein Fire, if you look at every win, every game the Rhein Fire played in, they just dominated. They just dominated. And if you look at the Vikings, they almost lost to the Berlin Thunder, for example. So that's what I'm really looking at. Rhein Fire has not come really close to losing a game. But the Vikings did. So that's what I'm really looking at in like this case. So I won't put I think we will see. That's my prediction. Maybe that's like a hot take now, but like Vikings and the Rhein Fire should be, or maybe will be, in the championship game, and then we will see who will end up on top. But I will keep them at 1 and 2, just like I have.
No, it makes a lot of sense. However, I do have a question. Is there an argument to be made that the Vikings are a little more battle tested than the Fire? The Fire have not necessarily played such close games where they had to kind of pull it out at the end. But I think it kind of plays to what you said. Maybe that's not for the power rankings. Maybe that's for once they possibly championship game. Okay, I'll leave it. I'll allow it. Okay.
Perfect.
Now 3 and 4, Surge. Okay, and Galaxy. I'm not complaining because I'm very involved with the Surge.
Right.
So hey, I'm not complaining. However, why do you have the Surge above the Frankfurt Galaxy?
Just because. So if you look at the quarterback position, for example, the Surge are able to put in a German quarterback and still win. They're able to then put in a new American quarterback and still win. So you just switch the most important position in American football. You have Hennessy, you have Weinreich, then you have Allen. Maybe now you have Hennessy again. We will see, but that just speaks for the Stuttgart Surge offense, right? They're such a good team that they can switch the most important position and still win, still dominate, and that's why I have the Stuttgart Surge so high, and they also have a really, really good defense. I mean, if you look at their defense, they're just an all-around team. And, they lost against the Helvetic Guards. They had a great game. Yeah. But still, the Surge are just a well-rounded team. The Frankfurt Galaxy also. But I think that they lack some running game, for example. I mean, Allen, for the Stuttgart Surge, had a great game. He was the MVP of the week, so he had a great game. But I think the Surge are a little bit more rounded, like a rounded team. And the Frankfurt Galaxy just lacking some categories, but still are a good team. So that's why I have them in my top 4 also. But I just think that the Stuttgart Surge, if you go head to head, then they would actually win against the Frankfurt Galaxy. That's why I feel they have to be in the top three, and the Frankfurt Galaxy set at 4. But the Frankfurt Galaxy are also only at 4 because they had to drop the Raiders a few spots because they let go of Christian Strong and then also parted ways with Dover. So yeah, that was like a kind of a big mix up in the top 5, but that's what I had to do.
Right. No, and like I said, I'm not complaining about the Surge ranking, and what you touched on there. Like, I agree 100%. I'm with the team a lot, and hearing some of Coach Newman's speeches after the game, depending on what kind of game it was, because I feel like the Surge are able to win in defensive battles or in offensive shootouts more. And you'll hear Coach Newman after the games being like, hey, I'm so proud of how we won as a team. Today our defense picked it up and carried us. In a game like, for example, when they played against the Raiders, the low-scoring 3-6 game. But then you'll have another game where it's more of an offensive shootout, and he's like, "Hey, today our offense picked it up and carried us, and this is what we are so proud of as a team." Is just what you touched on. So, all right. I'm with you right there. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to ask about a couple of those, and you touched on this, and maybe we'll just naturally get into some of these other.
Yeah, I think so too.
Shall we then talk about the categories that we prepared, and maybe let's see if you've got any hot takes, any controversial takes. Let me ask you, who is your answer for the most underrated defensive player in the ELF this year?
So I have 2. I couldn't decide really, but they're on the same team. They're on the same team. So Cologne Centurions. I think that they have a really underrated defense. They play great on defense, and I go with cornerback Deshaun Owens. So he's a really good cornerback. I mean, just look at Week 9 against Hamburg Sea Devils in Hamburg. He almost traveled with wide receiver Malik Stanley during the entire game, and he just allowed 3 catches for 48 yards against Malik Stanley. And you know what Malik Stanley did against other teams in the European League of Football. So he had a great game. He also, in that game alone, had 2 forced fumbles, 2 pass breakups. So he's just a great cornerback that flies under the radar, I think. So that's just for me. But I also want to talk about linebacker Yannick Wenke, German linebacker, also 23 years old. And if you look at the Centurions linebacker core, you have Zachary Blair, of course. You have Zachary Blair, but then right next to him, you have Yannick Wenke, and he also has great plays week in and week out. So I also have to mention him. And the Centurions defense, like as a whole, is really, really underrated. So that's just my opinion, but I'm excited who you got as your most underrated defensive player.
Yeah, I like yours a lot. I won't argue against them at all. Mine, I have a form of bias towards the Surge, of course, and I'm going to try and keep that curbed as much as possible. But in my first answer, my bias is going to show through. I'm going to say Mitch Fettig, the Surge DB.
All right.
This guy does absolutely everything. He'll travel with the number 1 receiver. He'll play safety. He'll play corner. Like, he's a natural safety, but the Surge are asking him very often to play corner. And you see how some of these top receivers perform against him. I'm filming every single game in slow motion. I have a bunch of footage in slow motion of Mitch going against these stud American import receivers. And it's very, very rare that he'll get beat in a one-on-one situation. And they'll keep trying him. And it doesn't really show up in the stats, but if you're at the games and you're watching him on film, I think he's super underrated. He's an incredibly sure tackler. Very rarely will you see him miss a tackle. And, I just feel like he doesn't get talked about very much. He's never on graphics. He's never getting big accolades. And so for me, he does fly under the radar, and I think he's an incredible player.
That's totally right. But I think for defenses overall, they're not really talked about that much. Like, media always tries to get offense, this touchdown, this running back, this wide receiver. But I'm just really, really glad that we both focus on defense here and get some defensive players' names out.
Hey man, for sure. I'm a former defensive player. Defensive guys don't get it all, and so that's good. I'm glad we could start off with this. So everybody, make sure you give defensive guys some love. All right, so those are our categories for underrated defensive player. Now, maybe a little bit more exciting for the fans always is offense. And Tim, who is your underrated offensive player in the Elf this year?
So this is a hot take. Okay.
Okay.
So bear with me. This is a hot take. And not expected at all, I think. It's Helvetic guards.
Okay.
It's a quarterback, wide receiver, and a running back, Silas Nasida.
Interesting. That is a hot take.
Still, because
Okay.
he plays quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and is the focal point of the Helvetic guards offense in every single game. There's no other playmaker the guards have. He's just the entire offense. If they want to win a game, Silas has to ball out, right?
Yep.
And if you put him into another offense, say the Stuka Surge, say Berlin Thunder, Hamburg Seals, whatsoever, just give him like 2-3 more playmakers beside him on the offensive side. I think he would be no question. He would be the best, or seen as the best player in the European League of Football. So that's why I have him as the most underrated offensive player still, besides playing like 3 positions and taking over and doing his things. But I think he's still underrated, in my opinion.
That's funny. I actually thought hard about putting him on here, and then I thought, man, like, yeah, of course he gets some credit. He gets talked about some, but I think you're right that it is not proportional to the value that he brings. And just like you said, like, you know, I played against Silas for years in the German leagues coming up, and he is always the focal point. Like, I prepared against him many games. It's like the plan is stop Silas always. And that's the same thing in the ELF. And I think just what you said, if he were to be playing on a team surrounded by more weapons where defenses couldn't just focus solely on him, he might be going even crazier. And I think that's a good take, man. I like that. Okay.
What about you?
All right.
That's your player.
Yeah, I was having some trouble with this one, and so I talked to some defensive experts, Cody Pastorino, the assistant DC of the Surge, who does a lot, who works really closely with defensive coordinator Johnny Brenner. So they work hand in hand together. So talking with Cody, he pointed my attention to the young receiver for the Milano Seamen, the Spanish receiver Juan Flores Calderon. This might be, you know, he's getting a little bit of credit here and there.
Yeah, for sure.
But like I guess we have a little bit of recency bias and bias of his performances against the Surge that I saw both of live. Let me see what he did. He did in the first meeting, he did 8 catches for 113 yards and a touchdown. And then last week he had 4 for 109 and 2 touchdowns. Against what we already talked about, the Surge defense with Mitch Fettig, with Goran Zek back there in the secondary. And so I think, you know, this kid is 19 years old, and you see the way that he moves. He's putting up some stats here against top quality defenses. I'm super excited to see kind of how this guy develops as he gets a little bit older. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're absolutely right. I also think that in him we might see the Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2023. He's a hot candidate for becoming that award, like getting that award, because he balled out. I mean, in the last meeting with the Stuka Surge, I think he also had 2 touchdowns in the first quarter alone.
Yeah, he was going crazy.
So he's a great player, but also fits to what the Milano Seamen do on the offensive side. So just get the ball out. He's just a fast wide receiver, and Luke just gets the ball out and then finds his receiver. So, but yeah, he's a great player. And as you just said, he's 19 years old. 19. So he's super young, and he has like 10, 15 years in European League of Football, and maybe also in other leagues, maybe in the CFL, NFL. I don't know, but he has a lot of great football ahead of him. For sure.
Absolutely. And that age is not to be overlooked, because especially in a league like this where the age range goes, it's so wide. I mean, you've got 33, 35-year-olds playing in the European League of Football. 19 is even young for college football. This would be a true sophomore starting in college football and putting up these performances. So I think the fact that he's doing it at this low end age range in the league is even more. All right. Shall we move on then to the Coach of the Year candidates, or who
Yep.
you like. Okay. Now okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you do you. You do you.
I
started the other two categories, so it's your turn.
I was gonna say no. You can still start it. I was gonna say I kind of had a little bit of notes for head coach of the year and assistant coach of the year.
Oh, assistant coach. Okay, I just focused on coach of the year
Okay.
in my
Fine.
preparation, but I have two names also.
Right,
first of all, I think it's no doubt, no doubt in my mind that it has to be Jordan Newman, Stuttgart Surge. I think you're a little bit biased too, but me, as just looking at the European Year football as like a league. I mean, taking over a team that goes 0-12 in 2022, wins only 2 games in 2 years, 2 wins in 2 years,
Crazy.
and now being 7-1 after 8 regular season games played.
Right.
That's just wild. That's just wild. So you have to put him, just hand him the award already.
Yeah.
Just like get Jordan Newman this award. It has to be Jordan Newman.
Absolutely, man. And I'm with you 100%. And I know I keep talking about my surge bias, but I'm really close with a lot of these guys. I got to see a lot of this turnaround firsthand, like off-season moves, what's going on in the surge office, all these conversations that are happening, the first initial practices of trying to bring the team together. And I think what Coach Jordan Newman has done, him and his staff that he's put together, it's short of incredible. And so, of course, I'm biased, but I'm with you right there. That's my answer for the Coach of the Year. But you said you had 2 names, so let's get off the obvious. Let's get off the obvious. See if we can get something hot.
Something I don't know if it's something hot because it's first year team in the European League of Football. Okay. Munich Ravens head coach John Schub.
I like that.
I think what he does with the Munich Ravens is a first year team, and he has to build everything from the ground up.
Yeah,
nothing's given. You have to start from scratch, really. And he's 4-4 with the Munich Ravens in a really tough conference. Yeah. And I mean, look at the Paris Musketeers, for example. They're also a new team. Everyone thought they're gonna ball out. They have a great roster, great talent. They have Zach Edwards, Kyle Sweet, all those big names. Yep. But John Schub coming in with the Munich Ravens, everyone thought they're gonna be like mid-tier, like I don't know, 4-8 team, right? 5-7 team. But now being 4-4 and in the hunt still for like a playoff spot, like postseason spot, that is huge for a first year team. So he also did a great job with the Munich Ravens being 4-4.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I just did a podcast. I just had a nice conversation with Sean Shelton for this ELF podcast. It'll come out next week, I think. But he kind of touched on that a little bit, and it's so not to be overlooked what these guys are doing with a new program. Like we just talked about, and it's very impressive what the Surge coaches and what the Surge have done with the turnaround. But that's also, that program did exist. They didn't start it from scratch. Yeah, they got a lot of new players, but there was some laying infrastructure there. With the Munich Ravens, like Sean Shelton was talking about, how they had 3 people and a logo in November, whatever. And now for them to be sitting at 4 and to be in the conversation, actually, that's a great candidate for Coach of the Year as well. I won't argue against that as well. For assistant coach of the year.
That's your assistant coach.
This is also not hot. This is not hot because he was the coach of the year last year, Andrew Weidinger, with Barcelona. But I think what he's doing this year, like you look at last year and the success that Barcelona had with Edwards and Sweet, right? And how crazy their seasons were. And now you see kind of the divorce of that. Because it's sort of like the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady splitting. Like,
I see where you're going. I see where you're going. Yeah,
duo splits up. Which of the duo has the crazy success the following year? And you look at what's going on in Paris. Like, I mean, I still think that Paris has a lot of potential, but those guys are not having the same seasons they had under Coach Weidinger. And then you look at the Rhein Fire and Jadrian Clark. His performance, I mean, dude has over 30 touchdowns already. It's a video game for them. And, I was listening to some hot takes about this topic, and that's I can't remember who said it, but that Weidinger just gets receivers wide open. And I think that what's going on this year just amplifies his skill and value.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Andrew Whiting is a great coach. I talked to him like a few times in person also. So he's a great coach, great person also. And I think you're totally right. He's one of the best offensive minds, I think, in the European League of Football. So you just can't go wrong. And I mean, his roster is also unbelievable. If you look at their offensive line just by itself, it's like with their size, like size wise, that's an NFL offensive line with with 6-7 dudes as offensive tackle, and it's just a great offense, well-rounded offense. Now they got Glenn Tunga back in week 5, so yeah, you can't go wrong with Andrew Whiting as assistant coach of the year, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so maybe now we can get into a little controversy because our next category is overhyped playoff team. Team a little overrated heading into these last 4 weeks of the regular season and then playoffs. Tim, talk to me, man.
That's a hot take. I had to drop this team 3 spots in my power ranking.
Yeah.
And I think with their current situation, new quarterback coming in, new wide receiver coming in, for me, the most overhyped team coming out of the bye week are the Toronto Raiders. Because they switched their starting quarterback. As I said, they released Christian Strong, got to sign Joe Dolanchek. They had to part ways with one of the best wide receivers, Jarvis, in this league, and signed new wide receiver Trevon Sidney. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're a new quarterback and new wide receiver. They're great players. But coming in to new team, new system, new head coach, new everything basically, and taking over a team that is 6-2 and currently has a playoff spot safe in quotation marks. It's a tough task. So I think if they don't watch out, they might lose that playoff spot because they got rid of their starting quarterback and their best offensive weapon. So for me, they're the most overhyped at the moment just because of that natural switch with the quarterback and wide receiver on offense.
Yeah, I had the same answer, and it's just what you said. I mean, you're coming in like the Innsbruck Raiders. This is one of the most storied and traditional programs in European football, and they have high expectations. So, some people were surprised that they released their quarterback with a record of 6-2, but they have such high standards. Their standards are championship level standards, and I think just what you said, they kind of. I don't think they expected McClam to leave, and kind of blew up a little bit bigger than they thought. Perhaps
that was not part of the plan. That was not part. That couldn't have been part of the plan. Like they wanted to get a new quarterback.
Yeah.
What they maybe think is a championship quarterback, but losing your top offensive weapon alongside your releasing your starting quarterback, that was not part of the plan.
No, absolutely.
That was definitely not part of the plan.
Yeah, and talking with people who've been involved with the Raiders organization, it's a pretty complicated offense, and some of the things I'm hearing is that Strong was not able to pick up the offense completely, and they had to cut down their offensive play sheet by I heard 150 plays to 100 plays or some huge percentage.
Okay,
and to ask a new quarterback coming in to be able to be better than that, just like immediately. You get no preseason, you get no kind of time to warm up. I'm with you right there. I think that they're probably in the biggest hot seat, the most in jeopardy of losing their safe playoff. Sadly, we don't have a disagreement there for any hot takes. If you had, can I put a little pressure on you? If you had to choose a team besides the Raiders, who you think are maybe a little overhyped as we're heading into the playoff run here.
Overhyped. So if you look at the 6 teams that currently sit in a playoff position, it's the Frankfurt Galaxy, right? We have the Raiders that we talked about. We have Rhein Fire, Vikings, Stuttgart Surge, and the Wroclaw Panthers. Yep. And for me, another team that has to watch out for their playoff spot at the moment is the Wroclaw Panthers.
Right.
Because the Berlin Thunder are sitting right behind them at 5-3. The Panthers are 6-3. but the Berlin Thunder get an automatic win because of their game against the Kings that is
Right.
canceled. So they're basically already sitting at 6-3 also.
Yeah.
So you have then also the Berlin Thunder. That's like the next category we have. Like
let's get right into it then.
we could just go into the next category that we have, because I have the Berlin Thunder as the dark horse contender and also like a team that could make a late playoff push.
Yeah.
Just because of their matchups and the conference they're in. So the Panthers are 6-3, as I said. Berlin Thunder are 5-3. But if you look at the Berlin Thunder matchups for the last 4 weeks in the regular season, they play the Prague Lions in week 11. Should be a win.
Yep.
And it's a home game for Berlin Thunder, so that should be a win. Then they play the Panthers in week 12. That's a do or die game, I think. But the Berlin Thunder have what it takes to win against the Panthers, right? They actually did in their first meeting in 2023.
Yeah.
So they could win again. That's week 12. Then they have an automatic win because they would have played against the Leipzig Kings in week 13. And then they played the Sea Devils in week 14. And they they lost the first one, but could win against the Sea Devils in week 14 too. So the Berlin Thunder have a chance to be at 9-3 at the end of the regular season. And
go ahead.
Yeah, the Rock Club Panthers really should watch out for the Berlin Thunder taking their spot in this playoff competition, and the Raiders also should watch out, because I think the hottest team that is able in their current position to make a late playoff push is the Berlin Thunder.
I'm with you 100%, man. I have the same thing. I mean, that they could very realistically win out for the rest of the regular season and jump. And I mean, if you go back and look back to your power rankings, I mean, right now the Panthers have a safe playoff spot in the if the season ended today. But you've got the Berlin Thunder at 5, 3 spots ahead of the Panthers, and I think you kind of just explained why.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm with you there again. Unfortunately not. Yeah, man. Great minds think alike. Okay. Great minds. Is there any other team, because we did have the same answer there, is there any other team that even if they're in the current playoff situation that you don't think gets enough credit? So they don't have to be a team like on the cusp of maybe making the playoffs, maybe not. Maybe they could be one of the 6 that are currently in, but one that doesn't get enough credit here.
I think a team that is not currently in the playoff picture but doesn't get enough credit is the Munich Ravens.
Yeah.
Because they become hot at the end of the regular season where it matters.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like dominating the Helvetic Guards, ending that 3-game win streak the Helvetic Guards had.
Yeah.
And dominating them, I think it was like 30-something to 6.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the Munich Ravens have a shot at maybe getting into the playoffs, and that would be huge for a first-year team reaching the playoffs in the European League of Football. Like the most, that would be huge. That would just be huge for the Munich Ravens to maybe get a playoff spot. But they sit at 4-4 in the Central Conference, currently in 3rd place behind the Raiders and behind the Stuttgart Surge. And I think it will be really tough for them because they have to win a lot of games, and they have to also trust that the Panthers, the Berlin Thunder, the Raiders lose some games. So it could be that the Munich Ravens come into the playoffs, but still, I think they're a team that is not talked about enough. What they're doing at the moment defensively, because they made jumps defensively, but also on offense. I mean, Castle is one of the best wide receivers in the European League of Football. Their Irish running back Oyevo,
he's great,
is awesome. So they have a really, really good team. And if teams now with, as I said, the Panthers, Thunder, Raiders don't watch out, maybe also even the Frankfurt Galaxy, they could be on the brink of taking a spot in the playoffs.
How crazy would that be if not only they're putting together wins, a first-year organization, they're trying to get everything put together, but they are actually like possibly in the playoff conversation. I mean, I think that's so impressive as is. We didn't talk about this, but I wanted to bring it up because we're talking about a first-year team that I think has really exceeded expectations in the Munich Ravens. I don't think a lot of people thought that they'd be in this conversation or performing this level. But a team we mentioned earlier is the Paris Musketeers, which I think you had in your preseason rankings up in the top 3 or so, just based on roster and infrastructure and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about the Paris Musketeers? What's your opinion on the team? Obviously, their record is a little bit disappointing compared to their expectations. What's your opinion
Right.
on the situation there?
So I think in preseason I had them in my top 5, like 4 or 5ish.
Sure.
But still, I just so in preseason you can just look at the roster, at the players, at the coaches, at what they have. You just don't see how they play, how they will turn out against opponents, right?
Yeah.
So just based on what players they have, they are a top 5 team in the European League of Football.
Yes.
In my mind, they have like French American football players. They're
Great.
really good, and they have so many great players on their offense, defense, special teams, and they have a great coach, also head coach, but also other great American coaches, assistant coaches that are American, that are really good coaches, but somehow they could not turn their potential into wins. And that's what I talked about with the Munich Ravens. It's really tough for a first year coach, also in the European League of Football, but also as a first year franchise in the European League of Football, to turn your potential, your great players, getting them to play as a team and win as a team. And I think with the Paris Musketeers, maybe I don't know, but maybe the problem could be that Zach Edwards and Kyle Sweet wanted to do their thing. They're like, okay, we're from the Barcelona Dragons, coming in here, triple crown winner. Zach Edwards talked about as the best quarterback of the European League of Football. Now we come in and just win games. We just win games because I have Kyle is Zach. But it's not a two-man sport. And I think that the Paris Musketeers maybe got into the trap of thinking, if we get Zach Edwards, if we get his buddy Kyle, then we are set up for a playoff spot.
Yeah.
But that's just not the European League of Football. The European League of Football is on such a high level that you just need to have a great team on offense, defense, and also special teams to win games. And I think that's what the Paris Musketeers like team effort, really, and like a team bonding, and just play as a team and not, okay, I'm Zach Edwards and I want to win, yes, but also feature other wide receivers, get your running game going. Also, a big problem for the Paris Musketeers was early on their offensive line. I mean, they got Ebanks from the CFL, former Hamburg Sea Devils player. I think after week 2 they have signed him. It was a great addition for Zach Edwards on the left tackle spot, protecting his blind side. But their offensive struggles, I think, were all over the place. But they got better over time. As I said, week in and week out on the European League of Football website. So each week I drop the power ranking, but also talk about why I put certain teams in certain positions, right? Yep. And each week I'm really writing the Paris Musketeers got a little bit better, but still not over the hump. So I think there are a lot of things that the Paris Musketeers have to work on in the offseason, but that's just my opinion. But they're currently sitting at 3-6, so I think they don't have a shot anymore to reach the playoffs. But maybe, I mean, next year, again, they're a hot team coming in into the next regular season.
For sure. And that's what I wanted to say. I mean, of course, they're having some troubles here, but, I talked to their coach, Mark Mattioli, when they came to play in Stuttgart. And you look at their season and the scores, like they are so close to actually having a completely flipped record of being, 6-3. A lot of close one-score games. They're also improving each week. Like you look at their first performance against the Rhine Fire. All right, they kind of got blown out by 30 points, but then you go to week 7, they played them much closer, only lost by 12, and that's more and more consistent. Same with their performance against the Frankfurt Galaxy. So they're trending in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And I think they've got a really good ownership group. They've got great stadium. They've got great players, and so
stadium is out of this world. I mean, their stadium is maybe the second best stadium next to Rhine Fire Stadium in the European League of Football. They have great facilities.
Yeah, and so they've got a lot of pieces, and I think they are suffering a little bit from what I would call the burden of high expectations, or the curse of high expectations. Because it's it is a first year program, and a lot of people were super excited about them. But still, the fact that if you win 3 games, we're excited about the Munich Ravens winning 4 games so far. So I think expectations have a lot to do with this. Okay, I think we covered all of
I
our
think so too. I think
right.
so too,
You
actually.
mentioned one last question, if you don't mind, that you can prepare for. You mentioned
Go
um,
ahead.
the quarterback position. Who do you think, based on performance this year, who is your top quarterback in the league?
I actually talked about that with a couple of colleagues, and I think that this is a really tough question at the moment in the European League of Football, because you have like a group of guys at the top, but no one really takes this top spot, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Because I mean, I think 99% of all fans of the European League of Football would immediately yell JJ Clark.
Yep.
But as a former player also, that where he plays, what offensive weapons he has, with Andrew Weidinger as his offensive coach,
Sure.
he's in a great position to win games, to put up great stats. He is a great player, and I also would put him in this top tier with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But I think that there's no player that really takes this top spot. Like, I am the best quarterback every week. You cannot win against me. When I'm
Right.
on the field, I'm the top dog. And I think that you have Jaden Clark in this top tier. I would even put now, like with his development, Zach Edwards back into the top tier, because he had great games in recent weeks. I really like Riley Hennessy at the beginning of the season. I mean, he got injured. Maybe he comes back now for the playoffs and last regular season games for the Stuttgart Surge. But he was a great quarterback, also with just doesn't make any mistakes, rarely, just distributes the ball and just plays the quarterback position how it should be played. Basically, I also really like Chad Jeffries for the
Yeah.
Munich Ravens. He also just sets up his offensive players really, really well. So those are the quarterbacks. I mean, Kenyon Allen also showed what he can do, because that's like another example of, I just talked about Jaden Clark being in a great position. Kenyon Allen is the opposite way around. Like, he was with the Leipzig Kings
Right.
and really, really struggled with the Leipzig Kings with fumbles. He lost the ball, interceptions thrown, and then you really see that playing quarterback, and the stats of a quarterback is not the quarterback alone; it's his team also. And now he comes in with the Stuttgart Surge and has 8 total touchdowns, 4 passing, 4 rushing touchdowns in the same game. I mean, that just shows how good of a player he is actually. And maybe he can also be in that top conversation. And yeah, those maybe would be the top tier players. I hope I don't forget any player, but what would be your top quarterback? Just
I,
out of
I,
curiosity.
I think I'm with you on all of this. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I'd put in that first tier. I haven't watched enough of Chris Helberg with the Vienna Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fan of his from what he did in previous leagues, or what he did in the German league.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that he's a really gifted quarterback, runner, and passer, but
Right.
I'm not sure if I would put him in the top tier right now. I haven't seen enough. But yeah, I think I'm a big fan, of course, of Riley Hennessy, and so it was a little bit sad to see him get injured. But of course, the
Mm-hmm.
Surge are, next man up and figuring it out. And just like you said, it kind of speaks to the impressive nature of Jordan Newman's system and his
Mm-hmm.
offense, being able to plug in, now play with 3 different quarterbacks this year and still be sitting at 7-1. So, yeah, I
But
think
maybe one question
yeah,
I want to ask you, because you have with the Stuttgart Surge, you have Riley Hennessy now coming back from injury, but
yep,
you have Kenyon Allen, MVP of the week, with
yeah.
8 total touchdowns in one game. So who do you think the Stuttgart Surge are rolling with in the playoffs?
Ooh,
Because I think that you can make a case for both quarterbacks,
yeah,
and I even think that that's just my opinion. But if Kenny Allen plays like he did last week, so
yeah.
last regular season game week, he makes the offense even better than Riley Hennessy did, in my opinion.
Ooh, okay.
So, what do you think?
You know
What
what
do
I'm
you
going
think?
to do right now, because I like to avoid controversy of the place that I have to go to each week. I'm going to say that I think what I will say, very uncontroversial, is that I think Coach Newman will handle it the right way. If Riley is ready to be back, that there will be a fair position battle, I guess, if you will, or fair situation here, and what they will do will be what's best for the team. And so that's my answer of
That's the
avoiding
Patriots answer. just
all
canceling
all
that.
answer right there.
Yeah.
It's not going to get anything else out of me on that.
All
But
right.
it's a great question.
It's a great question.
Do you want to answer it?
I think they should roll with Kenyon Allen, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right.
So if he plays like he did, because he actually adds another dimension to the Suka Surge offense.
Sure.
Because Riley Hennessy is really good at distributing the ball and maybe also better pure passer.
Yeah.
But if you look at Kenyon Allen and what the European League of Football does defensively, you cannot stop him really with like the receiver core that Suka Surge has, because on any given play he could just say, okay, I'm just run, right? And he's super fast, super elusive, and you just saw what he can do against the team when he has some time. He passed for 4 touchdowns, run for 4 touchdowns, and just took over the entire game. So we will see, but I think they should roll with Kenyon Allen. I don't know. That's
there we go. There's the hot take that we were looking for. That's what we want. That's the way to end it. Get a little quarterback controversy combo there. Tim, man, this was awesome. Really enjoyed talking to you. Love your takes. Love your expertise on the European League of Football. And we'll have to do this again, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Nick.
All right, man. Have a good day.
You too. See you.